Evening 12s, and welcome to the Seahawks 360 podcast, a SportsEthos production, where we look at the Seahawks from every angle, every week. I'm your host, Candace Higgins.
And I'm Tino Ganasius.
And it is a pleasure and a privilege to talk Hawks with you. So today, guys, we are going to preview a great matchup today. I think this is one of the better games of I'm gonna say the whole football week, to be honest, because Monday football didn't look like much either. So I'm really excited for this game, not just because it's the Seahawks, but because it's a great litmus test, I think, with the Baltimore Ravens and sort of how they've looked early in the season. Tino, what have been your thoughts kind of on the Ravens in general before we get too deep into it?
They're fascinating to me. I think they're such a unique organization and such a unique team. I think that starts with John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson, right? And I know they've made an effort to pass the ball a bit more and get away from so much of the run heavy stuff that they've done, but they still have that stout, nasty defense that you really have to work against to be able to score. And they've got the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. You're really going to have to bring your lunch pail and get to work because this team is tough. If the Seahawks win this game, they're going to earn it, right? There's no gimmies with the Ravens. This team is tough.
Yeah, definitely agree. One of the things that I found interesting is when you look at this defense, you look at the names on paper, they look like solid guys, right? But they don't look like world breakers, but yet they've been them in Cleveland have been the top two defenses in the NFL for sure. And so it's interesting to expect for the Seahawks to play, the Browns and then the Ravens, but they have performed like you would think the Seahawks would on paper, I think they have less talent, but they just seem to play very well on chemistry. Chemistry seems to be strong amongst the team. The coach seems to put them in the right situation, and they're just an example of, you don't necessarily have to have a ton of stars to have a great defense.
I would say they have invested a tremendous amount of draft capital in that defense, right? When you look at Patrick Queen was a first-round pick, Odafe Owe was a first-round pick, Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, right? You've got Jadeveon Clowney, who was a former number 1 pick overall. I think Justin Madubuike was a 3rd round, and then they traded a ton to get Roquan Smith from the Bears. I think they've invested a lot of capital. They may not be names that, for me on the West Coast, that I know them from college. I don't necessarily know them and how they performed in the pros,
right?
But they're stout and they're tough, and you look at them from unit to unit and you don't see weaknesses, right? Michael Pierce and Justin Madubuike have been two of the best interior linemen in football this season. Then you add Queen and Roquan Smith, that linebacker, and then you've got the secondary that's always, I don't know if it's the coaching or what it is, but the secondary always seems to play well. That defense is tough. I think the Seahawks would be lucky to get over 21 points in this game against this defense.
It's interesting to hear you say that because I think you've predicted 30 in every prediction that we've done. So it won't be
not 30, but it's not 30, but it's close.
Well, yeah, to really get into some of this defense, this defense is number 1 now in DVOA. And I'm really interested for a couple of reasons with this team, because like you said, they do have the investments, like you said, on the front lines or really just all around that defense. But also when you kind of look at their schedule, there's opportunity to say that they haven't played the best of the best, maybe outside of the Lions. And they beat down the Lions. So I think everyone says, well, they beat the Lions, so it must be for real. And I'd like to see what they look against another really good team. Because they played Tannehill, they played Joe Burrow in week 2 when he was for sure still hobbled. They played backups, PJ Walker. I think did they play the Steelers? Did the Steelers back up?
They did.
Yeah.
They lost to the Steelers though.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
it's interesting because they beat Houston pretty bad, and C.J. Stroud this was his first game, but Houston's proven out to be good. They beat a battered Joe Burrow in Cincinnati by 3. They lost to Indianapolis at home, which was weird.
That was such a weird game.
They whooped up on the Browns, who we know have a great defense.
Right.
In Cleveland, 28-3. They're kind of schizophrenic. They're all over the place, right?
Yeah.
They lost to the Steelers 17-10 in Pittsburgh. They beat Tennessee. They beat the brakes off the Lions 38-6. And that's when you're like, uh-oh, are the Ravens like the best team in football and no one's talking about it? And then they go to Arizona and they win by 7, right? Which you can't sneeze at going to the West Coast from the East, winning on the road, right? You can't really put that down, but still, like, it's hard to predict what's going on there, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to look at their schedule so far and say they're definitively great or they're definitively bad.
Right, exactly. Which makes this interesting, which makes this game particularly interesting for me because there are a lot of stats that as I research, right, them being number 1 in DVOA, just their ability to get sacks, the number 1 in the NFL in sacks,
31 sacks.
Near the bottom in pressure, only at 24% pressure rate, which means it's boom or bust for them. Like, it's kind of like I used to say with Darrell Taylor last year, like if he won, he won. And if he did not win, and that he didn't win as often, that was it. Right. And I wonder how sustainable that is. It's rare to see that, to be honest.
It's interesting about their team too, is Mike McDonald, they're not the singer. Their D coordinator, who was the coordinator at Michigan for a while. They don't blitz a ton. It's actually really similar to the Seahawks, right? Where they're able to get pressure, generate pressure with their front guys. And that allows their secondary to be great because they don't have to take away from the secondary to get pressure. And I think for me, that's a huge key for both teams, right? They're in some ways, they're really similar because you've got these defenses where, I know the Seahawks are 15th in DVOA, I think, defensively.
They're 10th. Well, defensively, yes, 15th. I think 10th overall. Yeah.
Ascending, I think, with the addition, we'll talk about it in a minute, but the addition of Leonard Williams and the growth of Boye Mafe, the growth of obviously Witherspoon, the health of Adams, I think this defense is getting better and better. But both teams don't have any discernible weaknesses at this point in time. And I would say both defenses generate pressure without having to blitz. And that makes it really tough on the offenses, right? So this is such a fascinating matchup to me. I'm so psyched for this game. Well, actually, when I digged into the numbers, apparently the Seahawks are now blitzing at a league average rate per game, which is completely different than any other year in the Pete Carroll era, where for the most part they've been in like the bottom 5, but also generally like bottom 2 the past few years, bottom 2 in terms of blitz rate. And I think that's what's allowed them to be more successful, even though they're still playing a lot of zone. They lead the league in zone coverage right now, on average to this point through week 9 at a 90% rate. But what I find interesting is that there have been games where they have gone man heavy. So I looked into the stats, and they kind of base it on matchup zone overall, right? But against the Giants, they play like 43% man. Yeah. And then they paid 41% man against the Bengals. I'm gonna guess in this game, this will be the lowest percentage of man and the highest percentage of zone that you'll see the entire season. Because
I hope not.
Well, because if you play man against Lamar Jackson and your corners, and the guys covering are turning their backs to Lamar's gone, right? Lamar knows especially if they have deeper routes, Lamar's gone. Lamar's picking up 20 yards like that because I'm guessing that either Adams or Jordan Brooks is going to be like shadowing Lamar, right, to try to keep him from scrambling.
No,
you don't think so?
Spying Lamar. Yeah.
Maybe. So my point is, if you're playing man defense, and Lamar will have one guy to beat, will be that spy. If you're playing zone and you keep everything in front of you, he may still scramble, but he's not breaking off 20, 30 yard runs. In my mind, a guy that mobile and that fast, he'll kill you if you play too much man. I'm guessing they play zone. It's going to be the Candace Hagan special, your favorite. It's going to be zone defense.
If they do that, they're going to lose. Because I'll tell you what, Lamar is 78% completion rate against the zone.
70% overall, which is nuts.
78
Right.
against zone.
Overall, what I'm saying is overall it's 70, which was a shocking stat to me. When I saw it, I'm like, Lamar Jackson, you mean the one that everyone talked all that smack about as being inaccurate?
I never completely bought that.
I think it's third in the NFL as far as completion rate, completion percentage, I think.
Yeah.
Right. My point is, you play man against a fast, mobile, good running quarterback, he's going to kill you because all of your defensive players' backs are to the line of scrimmage. And by the time they turn around and see it, the quarterback has picked up 20 yards.
If you're depending on your corners to stop if you're depending on your corners to stop Lamar Jackson from running, then you're in trouble anyway. That's on the front seven.
No, I agree, but you've got everyone dropping, right? Even if it's covering Mark Andrews, the tight end. If the tight end is running down the seam, right, the linebacker or the safety has to follow him. If all the defensive players are moving down the field and the front four can't get to him, he's got this huge gap in between. Whereas in zone, your eyes are facing forward and you can see everything happening in front of you. And so that's why I say, I bet you it is like I said, the lowest percentage of man-to-man coverage played by the Seahawks this entire season is going to be against Lamar Jackson. That would be my guess.
If they will, they're going to lose. Like I said, he kills zone. You can play zone against him if you want.
He can complete passes.
He's going to light you up. And so
I would say he can complete passes against the zone, but that doesn't mean they're picking up first downs, right? And I don't know that they will threaten the Seahawks enough that the Seahawks will keep it in front of them. They might surrender field goals, but I don't think they're surrendering touchdowns if you keep them in front of them, right? So
this team is ranked 30th in offense when they're put him against man zone coverage situations according to PFF. 30th in offense. They're ranked first according to PFF when you play them in zone. They'll kill you in zone. And they can do it, but it's a recipe to lose all day long. It's just like this year, the way this Ravens team is built. And maybe that wasn't the case, but remember, they've changed their offensive scheme. So how you play the Ravens, how you played them last year, how you played them 3 years ago, maybe you're right? That was the way to do it. But now, since they've switched over, their biggest weakness is man coverage. And part of it is because while they've increased their receiver talent, the guys really don't get separation in press coverage. They don't.
They got names, but they don't have the talent that you would associate with those names. Odell hasn't caught a touchdown yet, right? He's getting PIs. He's taking the top off the defense, but he's not been great. Rashad Bateman has not played up to his first round billing as a wide receiver, right? You've got now Zay Flowers has been great, but Zay Flowers operates in more shorter and kind of
he's
middle depth types of patterns. Yes, he is great in zone.
Yes,
but what I will say about him is he's gonna get locked up this week.
Not if they're playing zone.
Unless he's playing it, they can still hit him. They can still react to the pass, right? I think the one that I'm worried about is Mark Andrews, right? Because Mark Andrews is a top 3 tight end in football from a passing standpoint. Who's covered him? Jamal?
I would love that.
Jordan?
Actually. In man-to-man situations, I would love that, actually. I think Jamal can do that. He can match up on a tight end well. Now, if you put him against Cooper Kupp, then he's going to get smoked.
No.
But the fast, twitchy guys, that's not Jamal's game. He can't do that. The big physical tight end.
Following a top 3 tight end around the field?
He can. Either him or Devin Witherspoon. I'd rather have Witherspoon on Zay Flowers, to be honest.
I think Witherspoon on Flowers is a great matchup for the Seahawks.
So then you put Jamal on tight end. And it's not sure he'll get open sometimes. The goal isn't to lock the guy down. The goal is to contain him. And I think Jamal can do that more than people give him credit for on a tight end type situation. He locked up George Kittle. He plays great on George Kittle.
George Kittle, man. George Kittle, not the George Kittle 3 years ago, though.
Well, Jamal hadn't played. I mean, if we're talking Jamal on George Kittle, then we're not talking about the past 2 years. Just to be honest, his injuries.
I'm saying the name George Kittle carries more weight than how good of a player he actually is still, is what I'm saying.
I think when Jamal played on George Kittle in the specific games I'm talking about, George Kittle was still George Kittle. Now, I agree with you. Now, he is not currently matched the production, but also Jamal hasn't played, right? So, with that.
See, this will be fun for me to watch because I would, for one, would not. Jamal matching up the majority of the game against Mark Andrews makes me nervous as heck. Makes me nervous, right? I would rather Jamal be in more of a roaming, not a deep safety role, but a safety role closer to the line of scrimmage where he can assess and react and make plays as opposed like in a zone, as opposed to being able to or having to follow someone around the field, right? Because if it's me and I'm going against, if I'm Baltimore and I've got Andrews against Jamal, I'm running Andrews on crossing patterns all day, letting him post up because I don't think Jamal can handle that. You put him in front of Jamal and let Jamal react to the pass, then he can break that pass up, right? Because I think his instincts are what makes him great. But I love these conversations because it gives me something to like really hone in on when I go to watch the game and say, you know what? I remember that conversation. I want to see what happens with this.
And see what they do. You're right. They might play zone, but I think if they play zone heavy, they're going to lose. Like, it's just that simple. I know, yes, there are a couple, one or two advantages maybe to playing zone, and that is, I guess, Jamal on tight end. But I also say the biggest disadvantage to that is one of Mark Andrews' biggest strengths is taking advantages in the weak spots of zones. So, I mean,
they flowers too. That's why.
Yeah, why play to their strength, I guess, is why I would say if you're going to play to your opponent's strength on their home turf, you're going to lose no matter what.
I would still say, though, the strength of that team, I know they've become more pass heavy than they were in the past. But you look at that line, you want to talk about name brand, you want to talk about like big names with Linderbaum. They spent the first round pick on a center, right? Ronnie Stanley is a top 5 left tackle when healthy in football. Yeah. Kevin Zeitler was the top free agent guard a couple years ago and has been a Pro Bowler, right? They've got name brand dudes on that line and a bad offensive line. They can block. And so to me, it's still, man, I sound so old when I say this, and I know football has changed, but I still believe it. I think they've got to stop. You can't let Gus Edwards run all over you, right? You've got to stop the run against this team. And this is an offensive line. I like the addition of Leonard Williams. We should get into that because I think it makes them more stout. It gives them more talent up front. But even with the addition of Williams, if the Ravens ran for 160 yards against the Seahawks and won, it would not surprise me because the talent on that offensive line is that good. To me, that's the strength of that offense, that plus Lamar. And I still think it starts with stopping it. If you stop the run and you force them to pass, I think the Seahawks have the advantage in that situation. If it's the other way around and they're running the ball well, I don't think the Seahawks are winning.
I'm not sure that's the recipe to win anymore. I think other teams have tried that and failed because Lamar is better.
It's going back, but
Lamar is grown. It's a quarterback. He can throw it outside the numbers. Yes. He can absolutely. And if we're talking 100%. If we're talking about containing Lamar in the run, then again, that's on your front seven. That's on your guys to set an edge. It's on your boy D. Taylor to set an edge, right? That's not going to be on the cornerbacks because they're playing man coverage instead of zone. Okay, that's going to be on your edge setting guys, not setting an edge and not containing, or like doing like Frank Clark did a couple times in the last game, and that's being so aggressive trying to rush the passer that you completely break contain. I think it's going to take discipline on your front seven. That's how you win. I agree with you. You want to keep them contained in the pocket, but I'm not putting that on my cornerbacks. I'm not putting that on my cornerbacks. Cornerbacks' jobs are to cover.
No,
my front seven is
what their job. But that's not when I'm talking about the zone and playing the run and having Lamar burn you having Lamar burn you when you're playing man. That's not just the corners. That's everybody turning their backs. But that's more about getting to the second level. You're right. If the front seven or the front five, if you want to call them that, the 3 linemen and the 2 outside linebackers, if they can hold up, yeah. Game changer. Absolutely. I don't know that I have the confidence that they'll be able to hold up. Let me ask you this. What was your – go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I trust that Jordan Brooks and Bob, as good as they've been against the run, I trust those guys in those situations. I'll be honest. I trust those guys enough to play my corners to their strengths, and I can't make hypothetical situations based on what ifs, and I kind of got to go on what I know, and what I know is don't play to their strengths. But what were you going to ask me?
I was going to ask you, so this applies to this game, but it applies to the rest of the season as well. What's your initial reaction to the Leonard Williams acquisition? What the Seahawks gave up for him? Does it fill a need? Were you excited as a Seahawks fan to see them make the deal? Were you surprised? What do you think is going to happen with Leonard Williams in the defense?
I like the deal overall. I get why they maybe had to give up a second in terms of money. Would you have loved for it to be a third? Absolutely, just because it is sort of a 1-year rental type of situation. But also, it's what they needed. We talked all offseason. We, you, me, us, the entire 12 nation, everyone was talking about how badly they needed interior line depth. And it's like Jarran Reed became good, and all of a sudden we don't need that anymore. They still needed another guy. They lost Mike Morris. That was a big loss to the rotation. They were still short a guy. And then really, to some extent, I think, things went their way in terms of still having guys for the most part available to play those games, because they just didn't have the dudes. In order to get the best out of Draymond Jones, I think you want him on a rotation. I don't think you want to overuse them. It's early in the year. They don't have another bye week. They needed that. That was a bigger need. And you also, I know a Chase Young would have been fun, but he don't stop the run at all.
He probably played some. He also doesn't necessarily fit this defense perfectly because he's not stout enough to play that 3-4 end. So he's probably would be taking the Nwosu role. At which point, is he fat? Is he have the lateral quickness to be able to do that? Because to me, he's probably just a little bit too big to be able to do that. I don't think he was a good fit for the scheme. And I know people were comparing those two trades and saying the Seahawks gave up more for Leonard Williams, but Leonard Williams is what I believe they needed, right? I know Mario Edwards has played all right, but to replace him with the talent of a Leonard Williams, I think makes a big, big difference. I believe they get a compensatory pick if Leonard Williams signs elsewhere, right?
Yes, they do.
And they traded away the 2, and people were upset that it was a 2, but they have 2 3s from previous trades. And so, obviously a 3 is not a 2, but you don't have a big hole in your draft as you would if you would have not had the 2 3s. So the other cool thing is, and this is coming from the Mariners fan perspective, is all Mariners Twitter ever talks about, only questions I get for the podcast, for the Mariners cast, is when are the Mariners going to spend money? When are they going to trade minor leaguers for a star? How come we don't get we don't make any deals? How come this team doesn't want to try to win?
Right.
They see everyone else getting the bright, shiny, Rolls Royce, and the fans want the Mariners to do the same. Right. But then these same Mariners fans turn around when the Seahawks trade a 2 and a 5 for Leonard Williams, and they're critical of them trading a 2.
Right.
Like, which one is it?
You don't know what you're going to get from a second rounder. You have no idea.
You don't. And which one is it? Do you want them to trade and go get a star? Or do you want them to hold on, kind of grasp on to all their assets and not give anything up? You can't have it both ways. So For me, from a fit, right, the Seahawks like those tweener, strong, like the Draymond Jones, you can penetrate and rush the passer, but you're stout against the run too. Mm-hmm. I love it. I think it really balances this defense now. You got Draymond Jones on one side. You got Leonard Williams on the other. Jarran Reed is playing at an all-pro level, which is the biggest shocker to me, right? You got these edges that are playing out of their minds right now. To me, this might end up being a top 5 defense by the end of the year, barring injury. Yeah. This defense is great. I loved it. When I saw that, I don't care what the Niners do. The Niners have injuries, and if Brock Purdy shows his true colors, I'm not worried. I'm worried about the Niners, but they're not the juggernaut people thought they were.
And they didn't build to me. They didn't build on their weakness. They keep building on this strength, right? Which their D-line, cool. Mm-hmm. Javon Hargrave, cool. Mm-hmm. Nick Bosa, cool. That hasn't really helped them to this point. But then, so then because it hasn't helped them to this point, then they go get another guy in the same spot on the D-line. And then the question is, dude, your cornerback room
can't cover. I was just gonna say they can't cover.
Your cornerback room is abysmal right now, and so I'll take that from the Niners. Cool. Like, I'm more afraid. I did a poll out. I said, what's scarier? the
Right.
49ers getting a corner or them having Chase Young in it by a landslide. Them getting a corner is much more scary because it makes them more complete. And the Seahawks make the move that makes them complete.
You imagine they go out and get like a Patrick Surtain or somebody like that, right? It would have been game over because they can't cover. The thing is too, what was interesting about that move is, and I want to talk about Geno a little bit. Geno has proven in my mind that he can play. Basically, he can get rid of the ball by like 2 Mississippi, right? Mm-hmm. Because we haven't been able to protect him at all. Yeah. And he's still, in my opinion, as I watch him more, he's balling out. And so, the Niners can go out and get all the pass rush they want. They're not stopping Geno with the pass rush. You're stopping Geno if you would have gotten a corner, right? So it's either they're not concerned about the Seahawks or that was what they could get. And they're going on from there. But yeah, I completely agree. You took the words out of my mouth. They needed a corner 100 times more than they needed another pass rusher.
Right. Yeah. That's good by me. I'm good with that. If they're gonna make a move, then I'll take that all day. But back to the matchup at hand. So I guess, do you have any other thoughts on Seahawks defense versus Ravens offense before I guess we flip it?
Not really. I think they're going to have to hold up at the point of attack, right? You can't. First step one is don't get run over.
Yeah.
And I really do think that, I know we may disagree, but I think you play assignment football. You play primarily zone to keep things in front of you because they're not going to bust any big plays, and you keep the game close. And then ultimately it ends up on Geno's shoulders. And I think Geno has proven that he has the ability to win the game. So to me, defensively, I wouldn't take too many chances. I do think that some sort of matchup zone might be good. I think that if you're able to figure out how to have Witherspoon on Flowers and keep the rest of the stuff in front of you, I think that's a great matchup because Witherspoon is one of the few corners who has the lateral quickness to stay with Flowers, but also has the physicality to be able to bully him a little bit, right? But I think it's a fascinating matchup. I do not expect the Seahawks to get tore up defensively. I think it's a close game. I think it's a close game, and I think that, like I said, the defenses, there's a lot of similarities between the two defenses for me.
Yeah, we're gonna see. We're gonna see if they play zone and look good. Because I don't disagree that they'll play zone. I disagree that they should play zone. So we'll see. I think that they can have just as many explosive plays in zone. In fact, I think they can have more. Just because that's how their players play. But we'll see. We will see. All right, so flip the script. Seahawks offense against the Ravens. I guess number one, kind of by DVOA standard, they are number one in defense. Some people say it's Cleveland. I think last week that sort of shifted from what I understand. So they're back to playing number one defense. And Geno has struggled. Geno, similar to Lamar, has struggled against man. And those guys play man. They play man. I think they play 25%. Which is the fourth most in the league right now in terms of cover one. They play a ton of cover one. And Geno is the worst quarterback against man coverage right now, only averaging 3.6 yards per attempt, whereas versus zone, he's averaging 8.4. It is a humongous difference. And that's got me scared. That's got me worried.
Let me give you a counter. I was listening to one of the football podcasts on The Athletic.
Okay.
And they were talking about Nate Tice and Robert Mays, I think. And I agree with what they said, but not to the extent. They basically heaped praise on Geno Smith for 10 minutes. And they said that Geno Smith is smarter and more effective of a quarterback than anyone realizes. And there's a lot of interesting stuff. They talked a lot about the routes that receivers had quit on and attributing some of the interceptions to that.
Yeah.
They talked about his ability to mentally dissect defenses. They talked about his ability to get rid of the ball quickly. And those were things that I saw, but I don't have the same expertise, I guess, as some of those guys do, or the time to invest in really watching film to that extent. But it took me aback a little bit to hear them talk about Geno Smith in such a with such high praise. And, I think sometimes, and they talked a lot about Shane Waldron too, saying Shane Waldron is like a top offensive coordinator, and they loved all the creativity. And but I was surprised by it. And so I hear the numbers about Geno versus man and versus zone. But I also, in my mind, when I hear cover one, man-to-man cover one playing against the Seahawks, to me, that's a DK Metcalf game. That's a DK Metcalf game all day. I go to DK and I say, hey, man, like, you're going one-on-one against Marlon Humphrey. I need you to eat him alive. And I'm going to give you opportunities by putting the ball up early and trusting you to go get it, right? I think if they're facing cover one and you got pressure on Geno, I expect to see a number of go balls to DK in this game, right? Where he's looking towards Lockett and then he goes back to Metcalf, right? But because Metcalf, that's why you're paying him. You're paying him to be able to be a man beater. You're paying him to be able to eat that kind of coverage alive. Now, they might roll the safety over, but now you got one-on-one on JSN and Lockett, right? And so I think I understand they're heavy man. I understand they put a lot of pressure, but I do think Geno will have opportunities to make plays in this game. And the fact of the matter is I trust him. I trust him to make those plays. I worry about their ability to run the ball in this game. I do, because I think it's important to set up the play action, right? And the Seahawks are such a heavy play action team. Play action doesn't matter if you can't run. It's not necessarily to go score points running the ball, but I think the threat of the run has to be there to be able to run play action, especially against a team like Baltimore. What do you think?
Well, first I want to respond to the DK thing, because on paper, I agree with you, but they did that last game and most of his incompletions were to DK. Now I understand that DK was sick. To my understanding, he was very sick and he pretty much played through that. But it just seems like this year, he and DK have not been able to get on the same page chemistry-wise. And it's not just last game. It's sort of been a recurring theme. There have been times that it's worked. So I'm not saying it's boom or bust that way, but it has been concerning that they haven't been able to. I think part of the reason why the man hasn't worked, to be honest, is because him and DK have struggled in that regard in a lot of his man attempts. I think he does exactly what you just said, right? Try to go up for DK. And sometimes DK can bring it down, but more often than not, it seems like that's not been the case. And I agree with you on a lot of stuff that the podcast guy said, that I still think Geno is a very good quarterback. I am a little bit worried about the turnovers. Some of them are not on him, but some of them are. Some of them are. Some of them could have been avoided, no question. But there is an issue in that regard. So I'm not sure that I'd lean into that as much offensively because of that. I think you need contingencies, because if that's your only game plan and the game plan has failed in the past, you give it a shot, but then you need to pivot quickly if that's not going the way you want it.
I think a lot of it is, though, it's just to loosen up. You got to bring the safeties back, right? If they're playing cover one, that means they've got 8 guys in the box probably, or 8 guys closer to the line of scrimmage. And if that's the case, you got to loosen that up, right? In order to be able to run the ball and throw some short passes. The other, I think, the emergence of JSN is going to help that. Their linebackers aren't great cover linebackers, right? You got Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith, and they're fast. But if you can get JSN to loosen some of that up in the middle, or even Tyler Lockett to loosen some of that up in the middle, and you bring a safety up, that's going to help too. I think a lot of it, when I say, throw go balls to DK, a lot of that is, it's not necessarily the intention is to complete the pass, obviously, but it's the impact that has on the shape of the defense afterwards, because that's a threat. That's almost as important as actually completing that pass. And so for me, it's stretching the defense. And I'm sorry, DK Metcalf is, to me, probably a top 3 deep threat in the league physically, right? What he's shown that he can do over the course of his career with the Seahawks. And even if he hasn't done it well in the first 7 weeks, I think you got to keep feeding him. You got to keep giving him, throwing him the ball, even if it's not effective, because that is what he does best. So I hope to see that. I think the thing with the Seahawks that's different, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, is with the emergence of Bobo, the emergence of of Noah Fant to a certain extent this year, the emergence of JSN, you can't lock in to just DK and say, I'm going to shut DK down and let the rest of them, good luck to the rest of you guys. There's talent all over the place now. Gino's more of a point guard than he is anything else at this point in time. And I love that. That means you can't zero in on one guy.
To that point, my strategy would be, to this point, I'll give this context. To this point, the Seahawks offensively have been very game plan oriented. I think they've based what they want to do around what the opponent is. And I think I like that to some extent. I think there are some downsides to that in terms of identity or what have you, but I also think that the versatility is a strong suit, even if they've not been elite at any one area. So because of that, and because they don't have anything yet to lean in on that is their go-to, I think the strategy is use the versatility to your advantage. This is the number one defense. Do everything. Yeah. Run a go ball DK. Yeah, also do some 12 personnel, right? Your 2 tight end sets, take advantage of those guys. You know, that's worked really well in the past. See if it works well against this defense. I agree. Throwing some play at, like, this is the thing where the first half is all about, I just throw the kitchen sink at the dudes. Because one, you got to get them thinking, right? You got to make them think. You want guys like Roquan Smith, you want him thinking. Patrick Queen, you want him thinking. What are they going to do next? What is his formation? And Shane Waldron is really good at playing a one formation and then building different things from that. I think if you play different things in that first half, you do. I mean, heck, they've had 2 successful screens in a row. I thought I'd never see the day in 2 weeks in a row. So why not throw a screen in there and see if it works? Because for whatever reason, I think it's Jake Bobo and his blocking. It seems to work right now. We'll I wouldn't do too much screen throwing, but like just, see if it works. See if you do anything against them. But I really would use your versatility to your advantage. When you're going against a tough defense like this, you need to see what works. And then in the second half, hone in what went well, what didn't go well, and then just rev on that, right? Because why not? You got the skill guys. Like you said, you got the tight ends that can do it. You got Gino that can do quick game. He can do play action. He can do no huddle. He can do slow tempo, grind it out, run the ball out. I feel a little bit better about the run. Honestly, because Jason Peters did a really good job last week. He had an 88 point run blocking grade. Not good at all in the pass game. But you know what? With as many pass-oriented guys as we have on that offensive line, I'll take a run guy. Him and Anthony Bradford, those 2, my run blocking guys, cool. Because I think they need a couple of them. You need somebody who can get some push at the line of scrimmage that you can, you can run in that direction. And Pete seems intent on rotating guys out. You can debate the wisdom in that or not, but he wants to get Peter some run. So if he will, I feel a little bit better about the run game. I think they went away from the run game just I don't know. There wasn't really any clear reason. I think they just kind of got caught up in what they were doing, but the run game was successful. It wasn't that they couldn't, they just didn't do it enough. And Pete said that. And so I think they'll be more intentional about running it too, which I think will help because I agree with you. They'll need that for the play action to work. But they've got so many things in their arsenal. Throw everything.
Yeah. And I think the point is, well, a really great point that if you're multiple enough against a defense that's this good, you're forcing them to process and think. And if that gives you a 1/10 of a second more where they can't react, right? That's hugely valuable. And so you have to throw multiple looks and different types of plays at them and get their eyes moving back and forth, to give yourself a little bit of leeway and a little bit of time to test. I love that point that you made. I think that's brilliant. So K9 is averaging 4.4 yards a carry on the season. Zach Charbonnet, 5.8 yards a carry on the season.
Ooh,
I think Charbonnet is going to get,
nice.
I think we're going to see him, especially against a tough, grinded out defense like the Ravens are. I think we're going to see more Charbonnet than people expect, right?
I hope so.
Because he is such a tough runner.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that means less Walker. I just think it means more Charbonnet, right?
Yeah.
But this run game is, it's not as if they're breaking these huge long runs to change that average. K9's long is 45, which is good. Charbonnet's long as 21. That just means he's getting chunk after chunk after chunk.
Right.
And I'm not saying run the ball all the time, but I am saying you've been effective with it, mm-hmm. right? Continue doing what you're doing. And that's a part of the multiplicity that you're talking about, where everyone can't just drop back for the pass, and the outside linebackers can't pin their ears back and just come after Geno all day long, because you've got the threat of, maybe it's a draw off tackle to Kenneth Walker, and he's running right past that pass rusher. Mm-hmm. I love that point. I think you're right. That's what they're going to have to lean on, the brilliance of Waldron and the fact that they have such a balanced offense from a talent standpoint to be able to win this game.
Yeah, I don't think this should be no one person's game. I'd just love to see Noah Fant with yards, JSN with yards, Hadalock with yards, to see a list of dudes with 40 yards, right? Like, I'm good with 40, 50, maybe even 60 yards, right?
If 5 catches each.
If it's evened out like that, that's their best chance offensively, I think, at winning, because it does become hard to defend. And I think they've done a good job of, I think, showcasing pieces of that. But I don't think they've ever taken one game to incorporate a lot of things. And I think they're capable. I think it's just a matter of, like you said, Shane Waldron just choosing to do so. Right. And I think that if they do that, and if it is close, then you can, like I said, lean on your run game out. This is a game I wouldn't mind seeing them grind out the possession, like the time of possession, keep the ball out of Lamar's hands, keep him from making a big play. I don't agree with you, they shouldn't go run heavy, but it should be much better than it was last week, where they were what, 17 times? Something like that? Like something ridiculous. You got to be better than that. And I think because of that, you will see it be more balanced, at least in the run pass. But even more so, I like to see them be balanced in just diversity. So if they do that, I love their chances.
It goes without saying, but I also, in a game where these defenses are so tough, I think that you've got ball security is even more important in this game. I think points are going to be hard to come by. Yes. And you can't give up a short field, right? You give up a short field to Lamar and they score a quick 7. And it really does change the balance in this game. I just think these defenses are going to be hard to score on. You don't want to give the other team any advantages. It means that the receivers are going to have to run the right routes. Yes. They can't hang Geno out to dry, right? You can't. It means Geno might have to get rid of the ball quicker and not get hit when he's holding the ball so he doesn't fumble. They've got to be, you're not beating a team as tough and as like mentally tough as the Ravens without or by making mistakes. You've got to be mistake free and you've got to be smart about it. They're not going to beat themselves. They're just not. That's not who they are,
I agree.
And I admire that about the Ravens organization and the team.
They will beat themselves. They might be top 5 in fumbles this year.
Offensively, yes. Defensively, they're not. Yeah. They're not. They're too stout. Gotcha. Too talented to do that. I think yes, they will. Lamar will fumble sometimes. He can get loose with the ball. He can throw. Not this year, but he's thrown picks in the past. But yeah, it's such a fascinating matchup. These two, we could be looking at two. Top. I'll call them top 5, top 6 teams in the NFL in this game. It's the matchup I think everyone nationally, outside of that Miami, Kansas City matchup, this is the matchup everybody wants to see.
Definitely, for sure. So one thing that I've got, we talked about a couple of the key matchups. We've talked about Devin Witherspoon on Zay Flowers. We talked about Mark Andrews and Jamal Adams, which is another key matchup. And then another one, though, that I think is under the radar, and I do try to find my under the radar stuff as it is Seahawks 360. Darrell Taylor versus Ronnie Staley. Like, I'm concerned. I am so concerned about him being able to set the edge. Now, I will say this. He looks improved versus the run early compared to last year. Last year, he was an absolute liability in every way. I still think that sometimes that he's a liability, but he does seem to be more active, at least in more responsive, because some of his liability was just like effort, right? It was just not even, you didn't even try. I didn't see as much of that. I looked for it on the tape from last game against the Browns, and it wasn't there as much. So that gives me a little bit of hope. Frank Clark was somehow worse, then he looked like Darrell Taylor last year against the run. I know I said that to everybody, but Taylor should be setting the edge.
Well,
I was wrong.
So yes, that matchup scares the heck out of me because Ronnie Stanley is, from a talent standpoint, is a top 3 left tackle in football, right?
For sure.
And what happens if your edge rusher is undisciplined in their rush lane against Lamar Jackson? What happens? Lamar's gone.
Exactly.
Lamar's gone. He's gone.
And that's what I worry about, and
that's Taylor's MO, right? Taylor's MO is to just go rogue and try to get to the quarterback, and Lamar's taking off for 20 yards. If it's me, now I haven't examined Taylor's discipline over the last couple of weeks, but if it's me, I'm more apt to play, either say to Frank Clark, you're a veteran, you're smart, you know what you're doing, you got a little bit off kilter last week. What I need you to do is I need you to rush the passer, but I need you to stay in your rush lane and be smart, because you know what happens if you're not against Lamar. Or, maybe it's Hall, and Hall ends up being, playing a little bit more assignment football and staying in the lane. But I can't take that risk, not against Ronnie Stanley and not against Lamar Jackson. I don't think you can take that risk. Otherwise, they're running. It's either Lamar out the back door, or it's Gus the Bus, like off left tackle, because Taylor's too far outside. It's Gus running the left side over and over again, right? To me, it's imperative that either Taylor plays assignment football and doesn't go rogue, or you play the veteran who gives you less upside rushing the passer, but is going to be smart about it. Because I think that might be the most pivotal one-on-one matchup in this entire game. Is going to be on that left side.
I agree. Looking at the tape, because I have paid attention to Taylor, I would give him a shot, but he'd be on a short leash.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be on a very short leash, because I didn't like what I saw from Frank Clark. And part of it is, right, he just got to this team. So, I mean, it'd be surprising if he did anything game-wrecking. And so since he doesn't know the scheme as much, I also don't know if I could count on him to play disciplined football. Because he didn't know where everybody else was supposed to be. Yeah, he didn't know that. So, and Derek Hall struggled against the Browns. He had the worst BFF rating of anybody on defense. I saw some flashes still, but he also had some rookie moments, right? So, in a scenario of worst, you give Derek Taylor a shot, be willing to try other things. I also think that this might be the game where you do play Witherspoon tentatively more in the slot, which is cool because they like to play Zay Flowers in the slot. I think for that reason, they don't like him in press coverage situations. So they tend to get him lined up in the slot sometimes. You want Devin Witherspoon there for that reason, but also I think he can help you a lot more in the run support, kind of offset what you might have in terms of setting the edge. He can sort of, you're not going to be able to stop them. If Devin Witherspoon is your guy, if you stop the run, you're probably going to give up some yards, but it won't kill you the way that it could kill you.
They could shade Adams over there too.
Yeah.
Right. They could shade Adams to that side as well.
Right.
And I definitely think that would help. What just came to mind to me is this is probably the first game where we will see the impact of the injury of Nwosu, right? Yeah. If it's Nwosu and Mafe, you're not worried. Yes, Nwosu probably wouldn't win that matchup one-on-one with Stanley very often, but he's not making mistakes. Right? He's smart and he's not making mistakes. Now with Nwosu gone, you're replacing him with someone undisciplined potentially. And that's where you see the value of the player that does the right thing all the time.
Yeah.
I think that's where it really could potentially show up because of the combination of Lamar, Edwards, and Stanley. I love that point. That's a brilliant point. I love it.
I agree with you. And I would argue that you saw it last week. That defense wouldn't stout against the run. I mean, they did all right. They had enough makeup plays, enough splash plays, tackles for loss to make their numbers look decent. Right. But they had some, because sometimes I feel like they got gashed. I'm like, all right, that was like a 6-yard, 7-yard run. And then the screen game killed them. They got screened to death. And I think if Nwosu had been there, he's great at play recognition. And I'm not saying he's a screen whisperer or anything. That was KJ. But I think he helps a lot in the disciplined nature of getting out on the edges and being able to make these explosive plays. Darius Slay didn't have the recognition to react suddenly enough, I think, that you need in those situations. So, yeah, I agree with you, but I also think we've seen some of it too. I think Leonard Williams will help. But I don't want that guy pushing the pocket too much. I want him pushing the pocket enough to make Lamar uncomfortable. I don't care if you don't sack Lamar at all. I really don't. I don't care. Keep him in the pocket. I could care less if you sack that guy. Get some interior pressure on him, maybe, but I don't want him out on the edges.
Yep.
Like, the pressure should just come from within. This is not a game when I'm going to say blitz a ton. If you're going to blitz, be strategic.
Yep.
But it's not something I would say you need to just blitz heavy aggressive. It's not the game plan I think that you need for these guys. For the front seven, they need to play sound, disciplined football.
Yep. I agree.
Yep.
I agree. You got any other matchups?
I think that's my main ones for me. We'll see. I'm interested to see how this turns out because I didn't think we disagree so much on the defensive game plan. That's something to watch for sure.
Right? I love it. I do think I'm still worried about right tackle. I know that's cherry picking. It's easy to talk about, and I know Jadeveon Clowney, much of his value these days is stopping the run. It's not about being the explosive pass rusher.
Yeah.
But a veteran like Clowney, who's still athletic, or Odafe Owe, who's so fast, right tackle is going to be difficult. I hope that they continue to chip, with the back or with the tight end. I hope they continue to give him help over there because that's my worry. I think Charles Cross is not getting enough credit for being as good as he is, right? And then I'm also worried that both guards are on the injured list. So, yeah, just worried about the interior and the injuries and that right tackle spot because they do have some dudes in that front seven. But it's weird because as much as you worry about the pass rush, like I said, I think Geno's proven that he's able to dissect the defense and get the ball out quick enough that the pass rush is less, I would say, not unlikely, but less likely to eat him alive than maybe we thought it would have earlier in the season.
Yeah, I agree. And especially on the interior part, because I do think that Geno struggles a lot more with interior pressure, as most quarterbacks do. They tend to struggle more with interior pressure than on the edges. They could navigate, step inside the pocket, that kind of thing, step up in the pocket to avoid pressure. Interior pressure is going to be important. I thought I heard, and maybe I misunderstood that some of Damian Lewis was being sick.
Yes.
If so,
he's both sick and sprained ankle.
Yeah. If so, I'm hoping that he can come back and play. I also heard that Phil Haynes is back, but I don't know if that makes me happy or sad.
That's your boy Phil Haynes right there.
Haynes has been up and down, and so has Bradford. I think Haynes has the higher floor and a lower ceiling by far. Right. I think Bradford has a higher ceiling, and so the question is, do you which card do you want to play? But I would lean, if I had to, in this particular matchup with Bradford, because you do want somebody who you can get some push in the run game against, because I think that will be important. The Ravens are going to run. You got to be able to run too. And so I do hope that he can be healthy enough to come back and play well enough. I know he would be still recovering from that ankle.
Right.
But you kind of hope that he can hold up, because I think they need a couple run guys. Him, Peters, and I feel a lot better about the run game.
Me too.
So we'll see. What now?
You got a prediction?
All this whole game, I've been going back and forth. But you scared me now, because I felt comfortable, right, that the Seahawks can adjust to their opponents, and because they played 40% man on matchups that they felt that was necessary. And I just knew that all the numbers point to, and all the film, really, if you watch it, points to you playing man against his team. But now you have scared me into thinking that they will stick with the zone and lose. So I'm going to stick with them. I think they still win. I think they come out with win. I'm going to go win. Really more out of hope. I'm not sure that they win, but you hope. And if they do win, I think it's going to be like 24-21. like that.
That was exactly my prediction. Seahawks 24-21. But I think the Seahawks defense is more talented player for player. I think they lose if they make wrong or incorrect scheme adjustments or decisions with scheme. I think the defense itself is more talented. I think it's going to be next to impossible I don't think the Ravens are going to be able to pass the ball very well. I just don't. I think that this secondary is becoming better and better. And if the Seahawks are going to lose, it's because Baltimore's running the ball and runs them over to a certain extent. I trust Geno. I trust that offense to be, I think the talent on the offensive side for the Seahawks is so spread and at such a higher bar, a higher level than it has been previously, that I think they score 20 points in their sleep at this point in time. I think they've developed to that point. I think JSN's had a huge impact on that, freeing up everybody else. I think Geno's becoming better and better over time. I think the Seahawks are better. And I know I'm saying this about the number one ranked DVOA team in football, but I think the Seahawks are better. And I think the Seahawks are better than people think they are. So I'm going Seahawks 24-21. My homer. Yeah, absolutely I am. I don't know if you'll ever hear me pick against them, but this is a realistic pick for me.
I don't trust the offense. That's why I'm worried. I think the defense will at least be average. Mm-hmm. I think they might struggle some against a really good Ravens team. I would be surprised if the defense was dominant in this game. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the games with which the defense is not dominant, the offense has had a really hard time making it a game. Mm-hmm. Yes. They've had any wins that they've had to pull it out of their tails, really. I mean, mm-hmm. Like there's no way around it. And that scares me because I don't know if I think the offense on the Ravens can get a score if they need to score. And I'm not sure that the Seahawks, if they need to score, can get a score. I'm not saying that it comes down to Geno being clutch. I think he's more clutch than people think. He proved it last game. But I also think that they struggle in the red zone. And so even if they march all the way down the field, I don't think they're getting a bunch of explosive plays off on this team. So if they're going to get down, if they're going to get to the red zone, they're going to have to earn it. And then if they get to the red zone, my question is, what do you do? A ton of field goals won't get it. This particular timeout. And I also think that he needs to be clean this game. If the Ravens give him something with a fumble, great. But Geno can't give it back. My trust also in this offense will depend on me seeing them play a clean game. I haven't seen it in weeks. And that's part of why I'm losing some trust. Mm-hmm. Again, it's not all on Geno. I agree that sometimes it's not being put in the right position. Sometimes Waldron calls some weird plays. Sometimes these receivers aren't running the routes that they need. And so with it being so many things to point at, not just one, I think I'm still going win, but it is on hope because I'm not sure.
I was going to say, you changing your
I don't believe it. I don't truly believe with my chest. But I agree with you in the sense of that I think the roster has the talent to beat them. The question is execution. And I think that's been the question all year. Offense especially. It's not for lack of talent. It's lack of execution. Defense, I think you're just seeing their talent come together and just finally starting to execute in the way that they need to. Can they be consistent given the loss of Nwosu is the biggest question mark, I think, for me.
Right. Here's one positive note to end it on. And I think we can agree that this defense is on the ascent, right? Sure. You add Leonard Williams, Witherspoon has got more experience, right, in this defense. They're gelling. Conceptually, it's a little bit new. You're integrating Adams back, right? Woolen was hurt for a while. Roles are a little bit more defined. And in the last 4 games, this defense gave up 3 points in New York against the Giants, gave up 17 points in a loss against a refreshed Joe Burrow, gave up 10 points in a win against the Cardinals, and gave up 20 points in a win against the Browns. So the most points the Seahawks defense has given up over the last 4 games is 20 points, right? Yeah. To me, that's a positive sign. Even the first game against, I think that this is a defense that is getting better and better. I think it's a defense that has the potential to be a top 5 defense, and that gives you a shot in every single game. And even against the number 1 DVOA team in the Baltimore Ravens. So, if I'm a betting man, do I put money on the Seahawks to win? Probably not. I probably put that $10 bill back in the pocket and wait for next week. But as far as, I think the Seahawks have a legitimate shot in this game. And it's one of the probably most fascinating matchup that I can remember to watch these two teams face off on Sunday. It's going to be a blast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think that's it. And that's all the time we have for today. Tino, you want to tell them where they can find you?
Yes. So you can find me on Twitter at Tino Jr. 20, TINOJR20. I host the Mariners Cast. You can find the Mariners Cast on Ethos Mariners on Twitter. Yes, I'm calling it Twitter still. Right now, I'm previewing free agency and going through my different positional breakdowns. We did outfield today. That podcast will drop later on tonight. Usually 2 podcasts a week. A lot of fun, just working on my database for baseball and watching a ton of football. I love it.
Awesome. Well, you can find the show at Ethos Seahawks, so be sure to give us a follow. Happy to give you some detailed coverage today. I think it was a great episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, be sure, if you're listening on YouTube, to hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on your notification bell so you can continue to get our episodes. If you're listening on iTunes, please give us a 5-star review. We'll shout you out if you do, or if you don't have a 5-star, if you give your honest opinion, we'll accept that as well. So thanks for the support, guys. That's it. That's all the time we have for today. We're out. And as always, go Hogs.